Welcome to another edition of Talk City Greensboro, produced by GTN, featuring interviews and events happening around town. It's an easy way to stay in the know while you're on the go. Subscribe to Talk City on iTunes, Pandora, or SoundCloud so you can keep up with what's going on in Greensboro City government and beyond. I'm your host, Rodney Dawson, and I'm by myself today. I'm going to send out good vibes to my co-host, Rosemary Plybond, but I do have some wonderful guests that I want to learn something from today. So I've asked some folks from our Greensboro City government to join us. And main reason is because when I was in school, I'm dating myself, but when I was in school, they taught civics. And so what I know about the structure of government today is from what I learned when I was in school. I later went on to teach school and realized that my students have no idea what government structure looks like, particularly local government. And so I thought it'd be a great idea to find out what the assistant city manager position does. And I wanted to invite, at the time, the assistant city managers, Nasha McCray and Nathaniel Trey Davis. Thank you for joining us here on Talk City Greensboro.
Absolutely.
You know, we have a burgeoning city. It's just over 300,000 people. I've seen reports of 302 and 304. It's a lot of resources and manpower and attention that go into that. And then someone has to manage that, obtain the resources, navigate that whole system. And I'm assuming your positions is one of that. So before we get started, and I'm going to start with you, Nasha. I have Nasha McCray here. Tell us briefly about yourself. And what I'm looking for is what about you in your life got you into this line of work?
Oh, Ronnie, that's a great question. And I first want to start out and just say hello to all our wonderful listeners out there. I have about a 20 plus year history in public service. And for individuals who are looking to explore this field, there has to be something in you that compels you to want to serve and give back. And so for me, beginning a career in government particularly, it was really about serving, seeing something greater than myself. And so career-wise, I studied public administration in graduate school. It was not what I started, kind of had started out as far as education.
What was your major starting?
My major in undergrad was actually microbiology and forensic science. And in my mind, 17-year-old me was going to go and find a cure for cancer and other diseases. And then I failed chemistry twice in college and decided this is not for me.
Right.
But I've always, been raised and around, folks that are doing philanthropic work.
Mm-hmm.
My parents are very involved both in the church and in the community. So we were always doing something, whether it was helping, other families, just helping the community and being really active and engaged. And I didn't really, put two and two together at that time. So for me, a game changer for going into city government in particular was actually after September 11th. Just after everything that happened in New York and in Pennsylvania and just worldwide, how society changed, how people gravitated really looking for something, that sense of community is really what compelled me to want to get into public service and make a career out of it. By education, though, I'm actually a city planner. And so I tend to say that I design spaces that people like, even though I'm not a designer, but I like to hear people's stories. I like to hear, their perspective of what's important to them in their community and try to make that become a reality.
Gotcha.
Even if it's a community I don't live in. So that's always been important to me and have been a driving force as to moving into government and continuing my career. And so becoming an assistant city manager wasn't necessarily the target. It wasn't necessarily the goal, but I like to think, my gifts and talents have spoken for themselves and opened doors that have just afforded those opportunities for me to be impactful at a higher level. And then also to help inspire folks that have come behind me, that are pursuing and entering the field to be able to encourage and empower them as well.
You're covering one of the questions I'm going to ask later about if someone's out there, if you're looking for future city managers, assistant city managers, and department heads, what should you be preparing for right now? And so we're going to touch on that a little bit later. But what I did hear you say is you got to be a people person and you got to be okay to serve.
Absolutely. Yeah. In order for you to lead, you have to serve.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's one of the things that is important and key to being a leader. You have to know how to follow, and you have to be willing to learn and being open to learning the people that you're leading, because otherwise you won't be effective. If you just kind of go at it with your own perspective, own thoughts, and not being open to what else is going on around you, you won't be as effective as you really could be if you bring other folks with you.
All right. Thank you, Nasha McCray. We're now talking to Nathaniel. Can I call you Trey Davis?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
He got got another bar on
Yeah.
it, another chevron on it. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you.
Congratulations. When we originally asked you to come on, it was explaining the roles of a city manager. The congratulations is because you've just been promoted to city manager for the city of Greensboro. So we clap it up for that. Thank you and congratulations.
Thank you very much.
But it's in a good way, because you can talk about, one of the questions is, after being a city manager, what can you see yourself doing? What are you prepared to do now? And you're showing us in real time what that can be. But same question to you. When I was growing up, they said, Dawson, what do you want to be? I wanted to make money. So I said engineer, architect, stuff I didn't want to do, but I thought you could make money doing it. But I never said city manager or assistant city manager. Did you say that in high school?
Absolutely did not.
Okay.
So going into college, and this is interesting, Nasha and I are learning, we have some similarities. We just went in a few different directions. So when I graduated high school in 1993, I went into my first year in college as a biology pre-med major. I thought I was going to be a podiatrist. Much like Nasha, I quickly identified that course of study was going to be quite challenging.
Right.
I switched over, which started the beginning of my career or my knowledge and understanding of public service. Became a criminal justice major. I grew up in a home. My father was a police officer all my life. My mother was an advocate for a place called Murdoch Center in Butner, North Carolina, which is one of the most phenomenal and tremendous facilities I've ever experienced for taking care of people who are incapacitated and not really to care for each other. Mm-hmm. So I grew up watching my mother be a tireless advocate for folks in those conditions and making sure that they had rights. And then I grew up watching my father be this different type of police officer than what I saw. I grew up.
What you mean?
It was nothing for him to have a young man who had been in trouble, or he would arrest the previous week back at our house on the weekend, working around the yard, doing things. And so what I was watching, I had no idea, is that he was mentoring people or young men who were in challenging situations and just needed a break. And then I watched him quite frequently. My sister and I often laugh. We couldn't drive down the road without seeing somebody who was broken down. We knew that my dad was going to stop and help them, whether that was put them in the car or wait on the side of the road or go get somebody else. Mm-hmm. So I grew up in this really nature similar to Nasha's,
right,
upbringing, not exactly the same, but this culture of helping people. Mm-hmm. And so, after things happened, my life kind of changed pretty quickly. Right after I went to college, I started a different section of my life, and my first son was born in 1995. And so I started working in full time in 1996. And guess what I did? I became a police officer. And like right now, I had no idea at one point that I would be sitting in this space. All I wanted to do initially was become a detective and help people like my dad did. Mm-hmm. And so my career went on. I winded up in Greensboro in 2002. And, one thing I'll stop and say, I always say this, I came from a really humble environment in Granville County, not a lot of resources, not a lot of opportunities. When I came here to Greensboro, I was amazed. There were so many opportunities. There was so much available to me for professional development. And I felt like the world was wide open to me, and I was going to take advantage of it. And that's going to kind of go to a question you're talking about. People will look at maybe a Nasha McCray or a Trey Davis and say, how do I get to that space? And it's more about looking at the opportunities you're in, the opportunities that are available to you, taking advantage of them and making the best of situations. Right. When I got here to Greensboro, I had some opportunities to be promoted within the police department structure. I took those advantages, had opportunities for professional development, took those opportunities. And each step and each level, I was able to, enhance my abilities, but also take advantage of opportunities that were before me Ended up in this very fortunate situation. Assistant, when we started this conversation, Rodney, we were going to talk about my roles as an assistant city manager, which, like Nasha said, it's an ability to look at different departments across the city and really collectively identify how do we strategize about how we approach challenges that our city is facing, how do we approach the concerns of the community, and then how do we forecast in the future what we do and where the city's going. So as I stepped into this new role as city manager, I've identified a few things that I've been able to see over the last couple of years. How do we strategically approach infrastructure in our areas a lot now, not just a few areas, but areas that have been forgotten about,
Mm-hmm.
areas that we know we need to engage and aggressively approach development. And that leads to some things, just a buzzword that everybody likes to talk about, which is economic development. But how do we really look at economic development so that we have equitable economic development across our entire community? You know, we got drivers and these really huge things that are happening in Toyota and
Right.
boom, we're in an unprecedented time here in our community. But as my responsibility, I feel, is to make sure that in this time of explosion and in this time of growth, that everybody has an opportunity. We got to make sure that, if growth and opportunities are happening, that our grassroots organization, that our minority businesses are engaged, that when opportunities come up, then we make sure that those opportunities are available for everyone. One of the biggest things, and kind of turn it back around, and Nasha and I talk about this often when you talk about infrastructure. So we know if we've got these drivers in our community,
Mm-hmm.
we know that growth is going to happen. But one thing that we also know historically is that some of our minority communities are communities that historically have been forgotten about.
Right.
Growth and things happen to those communities. But that's one thing that I am determined that I won't let happen. We've got to make sure that those communities grow like they want to grow, and that they want to see the things in their community that really are equitable and speak to the identity of their community. I talked to a group one time, and if you think about Greensboro is so unique because it has multiple identities.
Mm-hmm.
You can go to different parts of this city and enjoy and feel these unique identities of this city. And I want to make sure that I do all we can to keep it that way. And then finally, one of the third thing I want to talk that I've really been driving is public safety. That's my
Mm-hmm.
background. That's where I come from. That's what I grew up on. And I feel like it is my job to keep the more than 300,000 people in this city safe. Now, what does that mean? It doesn't just mean, from the police department. It means me tapping into Nasha McCray's expertise in Parks and Rec. Are we creating environments that people want to be in?
Right. Okay.
Are we creating opportunities for people to thrive, be healthy at the same time while being safe? So those are just some of the things that, I feel like, these opportunities have allowed me to do, and hopefully we can get there.
You see why we're excited to serve?
Right.
I mean, just
Exactly.
listening to
Mhm.
that, and where our community is going under, our city manager's leadership, it just gets you energized.
Right.
So I'm like ready to go through the wall right now and get to
I know.
work.
I'm right behind you. But you do talk about the challenges, and this is going a little bit off script and what I had planned, but that's a good thing. You have to be a people person. You have to want to be a part of something larger than yourselves, and you have to know the facts. And before I came here, of course, I was at the Greensboro History Museum, so I know how Guilford County is the most diverse county in the state, and we're the most diverse city within the county. And so we do have pockets of different cultures everywhere you go because we made a concerted effort to do that. And part of that is making people feel safe. I just came from A&T's homecoming. Somebody flew a drone in the stadium. They had to make an announcement saying, hey, the game can't continue until this drone is removed. And so everybody naturally looked up. And when I looked up, I saw snipers on the roof. And I'm like, man, we're at a point in time where we have to have snipers on the roof, not looking for the drone, but just in case anything happened. And last week, I'm talking too much. Last week, I went to a game, my daughter's game at Grimsley High School. I turn around and I see somebody I know. I was telling some other folks. I see Officer Dwayne Diaz. Diaz, I think is Lieutenant Diaz. I see him there, and I feel like I know him because I see him every day at work. But I'm like, he's not here watching the game. He's here protecting me. So it's a lot that goes into that. The mental, how do you manage that? And so I don't really see the structure. We know we have the mayor, we know we have the city manager, we have the assistant city managers. Quickly, can you break down the structure or the protocol, how these offices work so folks will know who reports to whom?
So our form of government here is a mayor council form of government.
Mm-hmm.
So the mayor and the other council members make up the 9 members of our city council. And the city manager and here in Greensboro, the city attorney both work directly for the mayor and the city council members. So with that, they help shape our policies, our local ordinances, and the things that really strategically outlay where we're going as a city. What are we looking at as it relates to how we lay out our budget? How do we strategically develop the organization? And so the city manager's office, our job is to really, as somewhat, Nasha, I would say we're like the CEO of the city.
Mm-hmm.
And so ultimately what we do, it is our job every day to identify those priorities and those goals that our city council has set out and strategically implement things that we can do to implement them and make sure that when we do it, we got to consider a few things. Here are the major factors. You got to look at what the community wants. And you also got to look at your employees. So there's a balance that we always walk, but the main thing is ensuring that you work with the staff and that you work with the team. So Nasha said something earlier about being excited. I'm excited, and I told somebody the other day, I probably shouldn't let my secrets out, but I feel like this job is easy. And the reason I feel like this job is easy, so, when I was applying for the city manager role, I lost sleep a couple times because I thought, Trey, what in the world are you going at?
Mm-hmm.
But then after I stepped into the role and I really embraced and looked at the people that are working around me and the people that are in this organization, I thought, Trey, this is easy. Now, as long as you
Gotcha.
keep it in context.
Okay.
But the
Yeah.
reality is, you think about the experts that we have here.
Uh-huh.
We have people that are true experts in our fields. We have leaders like Nasha, who not only has she, had the academic, but she's had like this institutional and this
Right.
true working knowledge of what it takes to really generate ideas and strategies for
Mhm.
our community.
Yeah, and I would only add just briefly for the city of our size. We're the
Yeah.
third largest city in the state of North Carolina. We have, like you said, over 300,000 residents. Our workforce is over 3,500,
Mhm.
and we have a phenomenal team. We have subject matter experts that we rely on to provide recommendations to us that we then share with our manager to make those critical decisions for our day-to-day operations. So there definitely is a separation between those that are elected, because they obviously have to serve and represent the viewpoints of the community,
Mhm.
and they do bring that back to us. And it really is a marriage. It is really a partnership that we have with city council to make sure that they have the information
Gotcha.
that they need to make the best decision. Because as our city manager mentioned, they may not necessarily have the expertise in a particular field. They may not be the engineer or,
Mhm.
the attorney, et cetera, and so forth. So there's a lot of trust that's involved with what we're sharing with them to be able to make sure that we're serving our residents appropriately. And I think for us is making sure that we are creating an atmosphere for our employees to generate those ideas, to be innovative, encouraging them to have those conversations with the community and think outside the box, and many times to come up with solutions
Mhm.
that not only address the issues that are happening right now, but also thinking long term and being strategic. And you made a great point, Rodney, is that we know that there have been decisions that were historically made that disenfranchise members of our community. And a thought process that I have is you can't unknow what you know.
Right.
And so while we are in these positions, I firmly believe we have a responsibility to change the course of history. We can't ignore the fact of what was
Right.
undone, but we do have the ability to change that, knowing that we have residents whose lives, literally, the decisions that they make every day, that they don't
Right.
even know who we are. They could walk past us in the grocery store and don't know, but the fact that we have their lives in our hands based on the decisions that we make each and every day,
Mm-hmm.
that's a huge responsibility
Monumental.
that we don't take lightly.
Right.
And we do use that as a compass to help guide the decisions that we make.
And that's kind of where I was going. Now I want to say this: attend the city council meetings. Knowing the history of Greensboro, and then now having to watch these city council meetings, you can see how a lot of things come about and how the city is where it is today and where it will be tomorrow. But show up and make time to attend those. But it's the balance is kind of where I was going. I can just go to a game and say homecoming's coming. I'm gonna prepare to take the day off and I'm gonna go to homecoming. You have to work with the city council. You have to work with department heads. You have to worry about, oh my Lord, there's 40,000 extra people in town. How are we gonna keep them safe? I got to get people on the roof. It's a constant. Where's the balance come in, and how do you do it? Is really what I'm asking.
I think it's one word. It's trust.
Okay.
When you know that a city of this size and you have strategically placed leaders in positions that you can trust, and you trust that they're carrying out the mission and goals. For example, tomorrow night, Nasha and I will lead a group that will have a very serious discussion, both historically, safety wise, and for the future for our community in this city that's passionate about what happens there in their community. But Nasha set up a discussion with that leader over that area that's going to be impacted, and I left so excited because the reality is that leader's prepared. We trust the leader to prepare. We're engaged, but those things for me allow me to trust. This weekend, and I got to tell you, historically, for the better part of over about 20 years, I was a police officer, and I worked in the environment. So I worked not the fun side, not attending the game or not attending the events, but I did when I was younger, Rodney. I used to drive up. Me and my friends used to drive up to Greensboro.
That's why I saw it.
But yeah. But for the better part of 20 years, I saw the other side of it. I either responded to calls or critical incidents, and there were challenges. So there were concerns. My kids came of age. They wanted to go out, and they still go out. My daughter is a graduate of North Carolina A&T
Aggie
State
Pride.
University. She has a master's in engineering. I tell the chancellors all the time I love them and I appreciate it because they've created an adult human being that can sustain and take care of herself. So, but I do have concerns, and I want to make sure that they're safe because I've seen the other side of things. But I got to tell you, this weekend, my wife and I were invited to an alumni event, and I rested well. I enjoyed the event because I knew that we have people in place that I can trust. And, things are always going to happen, but, Nasha and I will receive reports and planning. We sent some messaging to city council and our internal leaders regarding the preparation for the event. So those things, and I go back to, I think there was a long description of trust, but I think it outlines why we trust them.
Right. You have to, because 2 people can't do it, 3 people can't.
Absolutely not. It's not sustainable. And I literally had an analogy. You were talking about football, which, so sorry that y'all weren't victorious this weekend.
No.
But we all know G-Ho is bigger than football, than the game.
Than football.
Right.
Biggest in the nation.
That's right. But as a football fan, go Baltimore Ravens, I was just talking yesterday of really the way we run government is very similar to a football coaching staff. You got the head coach. Head coach can't know every single thing. And while you have some coaches, they like to play call. A lot of times that's happening in the booth because he's relying on what they see, at a wide range in their perspective to know which play to call and whatnot, and that they've studied the playbook, they've watched film, which is the preparation. But on the team, you got assistant coaches, you have specific coordinators, you got coaches for specific positions, and you are trusting and you're building your team based off of their expertise to be able to cultivate, and educate and to make sure those players know exactly what they're supposed to do. And I don't think government is any different. I think it's very similar in terms of knowing the playbook, knowing situationally how we prepare, how we plan, and then how we execute.
I'm way over on time, so I'm gonna try to limit us to two more questions if I can. This one just popped in my head. You got the team, you got the head coach, but when something goes wrong, everybody blames the coach. They go straight to the coach. How's that handled? What kind of responsibility assistant city managers taking the hit? What's that like?
I got to tell you, that's one thing also that I wondered how I would walk into, but I love it
Okay.
because the reality is I stepped into this role to be a leader. And part of being a leader is making decisions and owning them and owning the responsibility. And I truly believe the people that you work with in an organization, especially one of this size, value more that you own decisions versus being apprehensive. I got to tell you, so I come from a police world. So it was all about making quick decisions. And so there may be some adjustment to folks that work beside me now because I'm in that mode strategically. I won't always make just quick decisions. I'll think about some things, but not too long. But the reality is, I think embracing and owning those decisions is probably, Nasha, I would say the biggest part. I mean, kind of going back to the sports analogy, I talked about my history. I was a police officer since 1996. And I can remember like the first scenario when I arrested somebody. So fast forward to today's time, while those people are still under my purview, I'm not the one out arresting people. So I have to trust whether if I'm working with city council to create ordinances or implement something new, I'm not the one out carrying those things out. I'm just the one making the decision to establish a new priority or how we approach and accomplish those priorities. So I got to take ownership. So I think that's a big part of it.
I'm gonna put you on the spot. Oh, you want to chime in?
Well, I was going to add to that and just say it's accountability as well, and it's accountability for ourselves as leaders because we have such a high standard that we know we're held to, but holding ourselves to that standard as well because the decisions that we make, they don't necessarily just affect our manager or our team. It also affects, like I said, the lives of the folks that we serve and then the employees. And a lot of times we are more advisors for him to make sure that we've thought through every possible scenario. And granted, we may not have that time to do that all the time. You have to make a decision, and then we just work as a team if things may not necessarily go as we've planned. But one thing's for sure, even in partnership with our council, we may not always agree on how to get there. Those things are typically worked out. We'd have a lot of good communication and dialogue, and it's just a mutual respect. And so I think that also helps to be successful and allows us to shape. But you have to have some level of transparency, and I think that's what he was speaking to as well. That's important in that role when you make decisions because you won't always get it right. I mean, no one is perfect.
And Nasha, you came through Parks and Rec as we mentioned. I'm gonna put you on the spot and ask you to give me one experience that people will be surprised to hear that you've done as an assistant city manager.
One?
Just one. I'm gonna give you some time to think about it. Give me time to think about just that one. But you said something important earlier about how it's important that you hear from the people. Can you tell us in the 2 minutes that we have remaining, or part of that 2 minutes in a minute, can you tell us how do people go about saying I want to be heard? What are the avenues or what protocols do we have in place? How you go about doing that?
So we have multiple platforms. If you go to www.greensboro-nc.gov and go onto our website, you can access platforms that you can communicate with both city council and our internal staff, like our city manager's office. But also you can access us on the web. We have a couple different platforms on social media. We have a presence on Facebook. I know we have a presence on Instagram and a few others. I won't get into it because my kids will say I get them all wrong. But those are ways that people can engage, communicate to us. I also have a plan that I'm going to go out to existing meetings where I know conversations have organically been occurring about the real concerns of Greensboro. So I'll be attending those meetings in the very near future. I've got a few on my calendar already to go to some of our groups. And those include a range from our civic organizations to our grassroots organizations. I've been talking about a few folks that, don't have a traditionally organized meeting group, but there are a few people that I know in our community that are touch points or have the pulse of what's happening. I intend to meet with them. And then I thank you for doing this plug. I tell people all the time, I taught a class at at one of our local, colleges. And I told people all the time, if you don't pay attention or at least attend one of our Greensboro City Council meetings at least once, or tune in or watch the replay, then you're missing out.
Right.
Because that is the pulse of what's happening in your city.
Absolutely.
I've seen stuff that I've read about in Greensboro history, and then attended a city council meeting and learned of something that happened 20 years ago. And like, oh, that's why that is today.
That's why that is. That's right.
Can I want to give it, I know this is off script. I'm going to make this quick. There's oftentimes this thought about our city council. I hear people may comment on social media. They may send communications in about what is our city council doing. I got to tell you, Nasha would agree with me. We have one of the hardest working, I think we have the hardest working city council there is. All 9 of them are super engaged.
That's right.
They
Everywhere.
are knowledgeable.
Yeah.
When you see a topic, oftentimes we're in the council meeting for a long time, but I got to tell you, that's because all of our council members are engaged. They're knowledgeable about what's happening. They're passionate. They want to make sure that they're making the right decision for the community. And I got to tell you, that's what it's about.
Right. Yep. They're amazing.
All right, I'm going to go back to my surprise question for you. Something that people would say, you did that?
The one that comes to mind, and it's challenging because my whole 15-year career here with the city, other than the last 2.5 that I've been in the manager's office, has been in Parks and Recreation. So I'm a Parks and Rec like at the core. I would probably say Windsor Chavis NoCo Community Complex. So if you all haven't heard about it, I want to invite you to come out November 23rd. It's a community celebration because we are doing something that is very unique. It is transformational. And we are doing a co-located hub that includes some of your traditional and non-traditional library services. We are adding that and joining forces with Parks and Recreation to have recreation. We have a lazy river, which is my favorite part. I mean, there's so many really cool recreation elements in there. Government services that we will be providing in that facility that you don't necessarily have to come downtown or to another location. Just figuring out really innovative ways for us to serve. We're actually partnering with Guilford County as well to provide some services in the community. So that is a completely different departure from the way we would traditionally serve. And what's unique and so exciting, it started from a conversation and a vision that myself, even when I was in a different role in Parks and Rec with our now library director, Bridget Blandon, shout out to Bridget, that we were thinking of how can we be innovative knowing that we have facility and infrastructure needs. Library is not building any new buildings. Parks and Rec, we need to think about how we can be more dynamic and serve in a more creative way, in a more impactful way. And so this really literally started from a conversation over 10 years ago. And to see this now come to fruition where we've been able to get support from our voters that passed a bond referendum, actually the largest bond referendum for facility investment from a public service, community services standpoint, which is phenomenal. We've gotten a significant amount of support from the county. We've gotten federal grants that support our vision. And when I say our, it's not just Bridget and myself in the city. This is really community driven, which is unique approach to the project. We had many conversations with the community of how we reimagine these facilities. What is it that they need? How can we preserve their history and their story? But how can we be innovative to make sure that we are better serving generations to come? So it's really, really exciting to see this come to fruition. We will be breaking ground in 2025. So really excited and hoping people will come out and then join us to celebrate next month as we get ready to decommission the facility and get ready to move to construction.
Nasha, how many of these are in the country?
There are none. So joint facilities are not unique, right? So that's not a unique concept to have a recreation center and a library in the same building. But the way that we are operating this, we literally had to do research of facilities not only in this country, but outside to really try to try to document what we had in our minds of what this could be. And so there are no other facilities that we know of that will actually blend the operations in the way that we are considering this type of concept under one roof. And it's not just in the building. I mean, outside the building, there's programmatical spaces throughout.
Right.
I also would be remiss if I did not mention the partnership with our Cone Health partners who have contributed to this project, not only financially, but also just through thinking about health and wellness. And when we talk about disparities and how we serve communities, we also think about health equity. And so this is a significant financial contribution in the community in terms of capital investment and reimagining the spaces, but in also what we're investing from a health and wellness standpoint to make sure that we are serving our folks. We know our life expectancy, particularly in this area, is not where we need it to be.
It's 5 years less.
Absolutely. And so we need to change that. So going back to what I said, we can't unknow what we know, but we really want this to be a beacon of hope and pride for the community. We also want this to be a model for the future of government and the way that we provide services.
Thank you for that. And I want to add something really quick. I went way over on this podcast, but I'm interviewing my bosses, so I think I'm good. But really quick, my work I've been doing with Dr. George Simpkins. And we had the best golf course in the southeast in Gillespie Park Golf Course.
That's right.
In 1940-41. They didn't want African Americans to play the course, although they tried. So in the early 40s, black citizens would always go and try to play. Normally they would have to go to Greensboro, High Point, Durham, Winston-Salem to play. So the city said, okay, we're going to build them a park. And it was an old cow pasture. And they didn't keep the grounds up. They put some holes in there, but nobody really wanted to play it because it smelled like cow manure and things like that. And, it just wasn't kept up. But they named it after a great educator in Greensboro, Mr. Noko. And so it's a great honor that they are renaming this facility after James Noko in a more meaningful way. Because that was, to me, when I look back in history, I was like, that was just kind of, let's just put a name on it.
Yeah.
Put lipstick on a pig, as people like to say. And so to come back full circle and to see this facility that's going to be unique and one of a kind in the country and to honor the work that he's done in the city of Greensboro, I think is great.
Yep. We're excited. Yeah. We are excited.
All right. I'm going to close out with this. Anything that we need to stay abreast of in the city, any websites you can give us, and any closing comment you like to say?
So again, www.greensboro-nc.gov. If you go onto our website, you can see a number of events that we have upcoming. There are things that all of our departments are doing. Our Parks and Recreation Department do a tremendous job of keeping up to date. They have activities for all ages, which I'm always excited about. Also, there are a few things coming up with our Greensboro History Museum and our Cultural Arts group is doing a phenomenal job. I want to plug in there Jackie. She is amazing.
Jackie's wonderful.
She's been here, just a little bit over
a year
or so. And I feel like she's taken our cultural arts efforts to a different level. I'm excited about the things that she's doing. Also, we're continuing our partnership with OVG, which was formerly our Greensboro Coliseum. I feel like that transition has been seamless. There's some shows and things upcoming. Tanger Center, also our Greensboro Science Center, which I feel like is the best in the country. We'll have some things coming up with them in the near future. There's just a lot of amazing things happening here in Greensboro. And the one last plug I'll tell you is that get outside. Go to our parks. Our Greenway is like none other. It is amazing. I love it. My wife and I will get out there and walk around. Sometimes she'll say, we're not going to walk the whole thing, so can we just go a short space? But I just feel like when you get outside, you clear your head. And then sometimes I get out there and I just think, oh, my gosh, this is us. We're part of this. And so, again, I'm just thankful for the opportunity to lead this city. There are some tremendous people who have afforded me the opportunity. The city council trusted me to do this job. And don't tell them my secret that, I feel lucky because I'm working with people like Nasha. It makes it easier.
That would make it easier.
Did anybody just hear the Windsor Chavis no-go? I mean, I'm just saying, that's amazing. And then, like, the people in this community, I got to tell you, when you walk, through this city, whether you're walking downtown or going out into the community, I love Greensboro. It's rich with history. And I think the people here take take pride in their city. And this is an exciting time for us as we grow, but we grow together.
All right. Nasha McCray, Assistant City Manager for the City of Greensboro. Thank you for joining us
Thank you
here
for
on
having
Talk
me.
City Greensboro. Former Assistant City Manager Nathaniel Trey Davis, now City Manager for the City of Greensboro. Thank you for joining us here on Talk City Greensboro.
Thank you for having us.
And thank you to our listeners. You can stay tuned in weekly by subscribing to Talk City Greensboro on iTunes, Pandora, and don't forget, you can download Talk City from SoundCloud. That's it for this week. Thank you for tuning in to Talk City. Be sure to watch GTN, your official source for news and information about the city of Greensboro. GTN is available on Spectrum Channel 13, AT&T UVerse Channel 99, Lumos 31. GTN also streams live on Roku and the city's website at greensboro-nc.gov.